changing the world of work for women everywhere. We are Watermark. We're the only nonprofit women's leadership organization that spans all industries. We connect, develop, and advocate for the advancement of women in the workplace. The Watermark community includes senior executives, entrepreneurs, and emerging executives that support you not only at the top of your field, but also on your way up.
I'd like to welcome you to Fitbit. My name is Tina Dow, and I am the Senior Director of Research and Innovation Operations. And here at Fitbit, our vision is to make everyone in the world healthier. Yay! And how many people have their Fitbit and know that they got their 10,000 steps today?
Well, I haven't, but I didn't get my 10,000.
All right, let's give a cheer for the 10. All right, here at Fitbit, we have an organization called Equal Bits, which is committed to diversity and inclusion across the gamut. And one of our tracks that we support are women in leadership, which is why we partner with Watermark to support events, especially here in San Francisco, because you are sitting in our headquarters. Thank you for coming, and thank you for making the trip here with all of our fun construction that happens down here. And I really want to thank Watermark. I'm going to welcome Kate Burns, who is the Vice President of
Growth.
Oh, and you know what? Actually, I have to tell you one more thing, because I told her that she was going to have to do it if I screwed it up, but I remembered.
Nice.
So if you are a tweeter or any social media, you're going to say, hey, we're here, Watermark, Fitbit, it's super cool, super awesome. Our Wi-Fi is Fitbit guest, and the password is hello friend. So let's all tweet, and welcome Kate. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tina, and thank you to Fitbit, right, for being so generous in spirit and space and spirits and food. Just so we'll go buy another Fitbit, so then we get even 10,000 more miles. And it's so appropriate that we are here, because so often we refer to Watermark as the Fitbit for your career, because we are literally with you every step of the way. Maybe we're a case study, maybe we should all get free Fitbits, just saying, plant the seed. So, thank you very much for coming. We're really excited tonight on behalf of myself and Watermark's fantastic Mary Thorsby, VP of Marketing and Events, and the Watermark team. We are thrilled to have Deborah Tannen amongst our presence. Woo! Watermark, are there any new members out there? Yay! Amelia! Welcome. And for those of you who are not yet members but would like to be, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at kate@wearewatermark.org. One of the many benefits is getting to come and be with amazing women like you are meeting right now. There are a few guys who get it. We're always looking for more, as we know. And then there are also 50+ events, 3 half-day conferences that we have. One is our entrepreneur conference that's coming up in October. Mary's going to walk us through a sheet at the end of the conversation with Deborah, along with information on our upcoming event called the Make Your Mark Awards, where we recognize the company, the women, and sadly, the guy who gets it. We're working on that to make it guys. So today, we're really excited to have Deborah Tannen. I, for the longest time, have been harboring a bromance with Deborah Tannen. That's right, a bromance, ladies. I first met this fabulous linguistic professor, who I didn't meet her. I did, in the pages of this book.
Yes.
When back in, gosh, I think it was early 90s, when I was starting my career, and I was dealing with the opposite sex and how they just do not get it. They don't understand me, hence the title, Well Done. And my sister gave it to me and said, Katie, I'm going to give this to you. It's going to make life lovely. Fast fast forward a couple of years, my dad calls, sis, I just heard about this neat book while I was doing carpool, and it's called 9 to 5, and it can really help you get things done in the office and make those guys listen to you. And so I bought that one. Third of ours was I finally purchased myself because as a mother of 2 daughters and also the youngest of 4 children from my own mother, and my own mother so repeatedly would say, even at the age of 40, you're gonna wear that? So I got it, and the most horrifying, I was sharing this the other day, I just said that same phrase to my own daughter 48 hours ago. Yuck! So I've become that person, so thank you. She will be getting a copy of this book. Tonight we're here to listen about Deborah's new book, and it's about You're the Only One I Can Tell, and it's really delving into the relationships between girlfriends. Friend, sometimes foe, sometimes be like a exhibition. And so through over 80 interviews with women and girls aged 9 to 97, Deborah's got all sorts of new pearls of wisdom. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the amazing Deborah Tannen.
Thank you so much. What a treat to have a room full of women to talk to. Can you all hear me? Yes. And it's a treat to be in San Francisco. It's kind of like a place I spent a lot of time. My PhD is from Berkeley. And so my best friends still live there. My husband's from Palo Alto, so we spend a lot of time there. And I always thought, sometime before I die, I want to live in San Francisco. Haven't made it yet, but there's still time. Well, okay, as you hear, the topic today is going to be friendships between women, conversations that women friends have. So I want to say right at the beginning, which I try to say at the beginning of all my talks, because I always talk about patterns that are common among women, patterns, ways of speaking, common among men. Nothing is true of all women and all men. There are many influences on our style other than our gender. In fact, my dissertation was not about gender at all. It was New York versus California. And many of you would appreciate the California side of it. You may have already guessed I was the New York side of it. And I'm going to be making comments about friendships between women. Much of what I say may also apply to friendships between men, between women and men, especially women and gay men. I have a bit to say about that in the book. My own best friend is a gay man. But most of what I will be talking about is friendships and conversations between friends, both of whom are women. And as you heard, it's based on interviews with women, girls, 9 to 97, and just conversations that people reported to me and that I took part in. I heard comments like, my friendships with women are as essential as air. My women friends are the most sustaining thing in my life. But I also heard comments like, and less of them, but I did hear comments like, I find friendships with women a difficult terrain to navigate. And I'm trying in this book to address both of those sides of it. I heard such deeply moving stories about how friends came through for each other, especially in times of difficulty, death of a spouse and illness, friends who just hopped on a plane, flew across the country, stayed for a week, 2 weeks, as long as they were needed. A friend who called her friend every day for a year after her husband had passed away. And friends who talk every day for no particular reason, just because they check in. Maybe at the beginning of the day, maybe at the end of the day. One woman commented, she said, if a friend called me and said, I need bail, I would say, even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd say, can I come in my nightie? I would do anything for a friend, and I heard about people who did do anything for a friend. But most of all, what I heard is friends who were available to talk. And this is one thing that tends to characterize women's friendships as compared to men's. We tend to talk more, at greater length, and about more personal topics. A woman who was telling me how terrible she felt, and this is one of the worst things that can happen. A very close, very long-time friend had passed away, and she said, the worst thing is that I can't call her up and tell her how terrible I feel about her dying. because that's what she would have done, call that friend to say how bad she felt. And this is something that, all this talk is something that makes our friendships so gratifying, but also it is what can make them challenging. And I'm going to start by telling you a conversation that a woman told me about that I think captures the ways that friendships among women can sometimes differ from those among men. So she was talking on the phone to her son. The son had recently graduated from college, and he was living in a distant city, happened to be San Francisco. And San Francisco is the center of the universe, what can we say? And she asked him about one of his friends that she knew quite well. And the conversation went like this. Have you talked to Mike lately? Yeah, I talked to him yesterday. How's he doing? I don't know. Well, didn't you just talk to him? Yeah, talked to him yesterday. Well, how's his job? I don't know. How's his girlfriend? Don't know. What did you talk about? Football? Did you only talk about football? No, soccer too. This would be very unlikely between close women friends. Knowing what's going on in your friend's life, telling your friend what's going on in your life is actually a requirement of friendship. And if a friend learned something important was going on in her life, in a friend's life, and she didn't tell you, it could almost feel like a betrayal. And one woman actually talked about that and how hurt she was. She said, I felt like she had lied to me because I was telling her what was going on in my life and she wasn't telling me what was going on in hers. There was a man in the audience when I recounted this conversation, and he said this really captured something that he experienced. He and his wife were friends with another couple. He hung out with the guy, wife hung out with the other woman, and one evening the wife said to him, isn't this terrible that they're getting divorced? And he had no idea. He and the guy had played tennis every week for months, but he said, this is a quote, the topic of his marriage never came up. This, again, would be rather unusual for women who were close friends. So talk is and when I wrote You Just Didn't Understand, and I still hear from people that they say, I read your book, and that's the one they mean, You Just Didn't Understand. One of the things I often said was, for girls and women, talk is the glue that holds a relationship together. Where for boys and men, it will often be activities, doing things together that creates that closeness. And the talk itself can be a comfort. So a woman recalled, she was now in her 80s, but she recalled when her kid was really, really small. She had a neighbor who had a child of similar age. She said one time her neighbor called, and she was really upset. Her little boy had dropped a jar of mayonnaise. And then he spread the mayonnaise all over the floor. And then he added eggs to it because he was going to make a cake. And she said, the woman telling me said, she just left the mess and came over, and we drank coffee and commiserated. And I love that word, commiserated, because that is a kind of talk that is particularly common among women friends. We call it troubles talk. You're unhappy about something, something's bothering you, you want to talk to somebody about it. And being able to talk to somebody about it makes you feel it's more bearable. And this seems to be true all over the world. All the interviews for the book I did myself, except I have a grad student from Kazakhstan. And she was going home one summer when I was doing the research, and I asked her to interview women in the village in Kazakhstan that she was from. So she did. And in one of those interviews, this is a comment made by one of the women from that Kazakh village, talking about troubles talk. She said, when you have talked to someone, it's lighter on the soul. The days seem sunnier, and troubles step back and start seeming smaller. I thought that was such a lovely way to put it. And so this role of troubles talk is something, again, that tends to be somewhat different among women's friendships than men's. And it's the key to a scenario that people really picked up and talked about a lot from the book You Just Didn't Understand. And that's a scenario where a woman and man might be talking, she tells about a problem that she's having, and he tells her how to fix the problem. And she's frustrated because that isn't really what she wanted. And one of the comments that I made at the time, and it was picked up, many people made this comment, she really didn't want a solution, she wanted to talk about it. Now, of course, it's very frustrating to him because he's wondering, why do you want to talk about it if you don't want to do anything about it? I think that's a little different. I actually don't think that's completely right. I don't think it's true that when we talk about troubles, we don't want a solution. I think she probably didn't want it right off the bat. How would the conversation go if it was with a woman friend? Well, let's see. You tell about the problem, tell about a situation, and she would say something like, gee, why do you think he said that? And then, what did you say? And then, what do you think you might do about it? And how do you think he would react if you did that? And after talking about it and asking all these questions and getting the answers, you would work around to finding a solution. In all the things all the books I've written, I talk about message and meta-message. Message is the meaning of the words. If you have a dictionary and you know the language, you know what the meaning of the words are. That's the message. Meta-message is what it says about the relationship that you say these words in this way, in this context. For Troubles Talk, I think the message may be about the troubles, but the meta-message, if someone is willing to take the time to talk to you at length about your problem, work it through with you, ask you these questions, listening to the answers, that sends a meta-message of caring. And that lets you know that you're not alone in the world, that there is somebody you have a connection to. So that's the thing that I think is frustrating. If a woman tells a man about a problem and he gives her the solution right away, it shuts down the conversation. And the conversation is what she was actually trying to start in the first place. Now, as a sidebar, that might be a secondary benefit for him, because he may not want to have a kind of conversation that he really doesn't know what the point of. Why would you want to talk about it? And many men tell me that once they understand why she might want to talk about it, then he's quite happy to listen to it. But the advice that people gave at the time, just tell him, I don't want a solution, I just want you to listen, that really doesn't work if you don't understand why, because it'll drive you crazy to listen to something that you don't understand the reason for. So it's the talk itself that I think sends this meta-message of caring. Another kind of talk that is really particular to girls and women's friendships is exchanging secrets. And you know, there's this iconic image of two little girls and one is whispering in the other's ear. And I have collected these from all over the world. Two little girls, one's whispering in the other's ear. I have on occasion, but very rarely encountered a picture of two little boys, one's whispering in the other's ear. And this is the level of talk that is telling about things you wouldn't tell to other people. With little kids, it isn't always a literal secret. They'll say, I'll tell you a secret, but when they whisper, it really isn't anything pretty important. But for women, it's often something that you wouldn't tell to other people. So one woman, for example, said, a close friend is someone who knows things about me that other people don't. One woman said, if she's a really good friend, I tell her everything I think and everything I feel. A woman, and this was the 97-year-old woman that I was interviewing, she was telling me about her friendships and different people. And at one point she said about a particular friend, she said, she isn't that close a friend. I wouldn't tell her about my children's problems. And then at another point in the same conversation, she said about another friend, she isn't that close a friend. I wouldn't tell her what I had for dinner. Now, it might seem odd, why do you have to be a close friend to know what you had for dinner? Well, think about that end-of-day conversation where there's somebody you're close to, and you tell them where you went and what you did, and where you ate, and what did you have, and you tell them what you had for dinner. Again, it's that meta-message of caring, somebody who cares about those details. And that, by the way, was very similar to what I found in doing research for my books about sisters. That was the last one. It's called You Were Always Mom's Favorite, about sisters, and mothers and daughters. So, for example, a woman said about her mother, who else can I tell? I got a good deal on toilet paper. Somebody who cares about these details of your life. Quite a few of the older women that I talked to went on at some length about how disapproving they were of social media and the way young people use social media. And one woman commented very dismissively, she said, all this stuff out there that nobody needs to know. I don't care what somebody had for dinner. And I thought of that other comment. If it's somebody that you care about, you do care what they had for dinner. So I think a lot of what social media are doing, I like to say are doing because it sounds wrong to me to say is, but I think you would say social media is ratcheting up both the benefits and the risks of close relationships. One of the really wonderful things about social media, texting, emails, Instagram, are these levels of connection. You can stay connected to people that you otherwise wouldn't be. I mean, when I was in college, we called home once a week. My female students, they're talking to their mothers all day, throughout the day. In fact, sometimes the mothers complain, it's too much. So this level of connection can be very, again, a great benefit. But something that is a big danger in conversations and relationships among women that gets ratcheted up by social media is fear of being left out. Sisters, mothers and daughters, friends, when women told me they were hurt by another woman, it often was they were hurt because they weren't told something, or they were hurt because they were left out. They weren't included in something. Now, you know the word FOMO, F-O-M-O, fear of missing out. That's why the kids are always scrolling their Instagram feed and why I'm always checking my email. You're afraid you're going to miss out. I've coined the term FOBLO, F-O-B-L-O, FOBLO, fear of being left out. With FOMO, you missed the party because you didn't check your phone in time. With FOBLO, you missed the party because you weren't invited. And that's worse. With social media, everybody you don't know is doing something without you, right? Well, you didn't have to know about it. Now you have to see pictures of it. You're constantly faced with pictures of people doing things that you weren't there. Now, it could be wonderful. My classes have discussed this at length. It's interesting. A group of friends, they do something, one of them can't be there, so they take pictures and they send it to the friend that can't be there, so she'll feel included. But will she feel included, or will it make her feel bad to see all those pictures of them doing things where she's not there? And I think it could be either one. There's a reason that girls and women are very sensitive to being left out. Girls and women, and it's really prominent in little kids, punish the girls they don't like by locking them out. Boys, it seems, don't tend to do that. If they don't like a boy, they let him play. Maybe they mistreat him, but they let him play. Girls will lock out the girls they don't like. Now, on one level, they do it. There's a lot of talk about this, mean girls. Part of it is because if you're telling secrets, you can't do that in front of girls you don't want to be friends with, because only your friends can know your secrets. But kids are really creative girls are very creative about locking out the girls they don't like. So one woman told me she overheard little kids, and this was for second graders, there's a rule in school, you can't say you can't play. So she heard one little girl saying to another one, well, we're not really playing. And a colleague of mine studied preschoolers, and she taped a couple little girls. Some of them were playing house. Another one wanted to come and join them. They didn't like that girl. So she said to her, you can be the baby brother, but you aren't born yet. She gave her a non-speaking part. Very creative about not including girls they don't like. I coined another term too. I call it FOGCO, F-O-G-K-O, fear of getting kicked out. And that's even worse than getting left out. Girls, again, especially in middle school and high school, but I encountered examples of it happening among adult women as well. A group of girls suddenly decides to eject a girl from their group. Did any of you either experience this or observe it in middle school or high school? It's common. I talked to one of the young women, a woman who now I guess in her 40s, but she was recalling that she still feels guilty. When she was in high school, a group that she was part of, and they had all been the same group in middle school, suddenly decided to eject one of the girls from middle school, kick her out of the group. And this woman, now in her 40s, still feels guilty. And what she said was that girl had been really close to her in middle school, but she didn't stand up for her, and she really felt bad that she hadn't. And of course, the reason often one doesn't is because you're afraid they'll kick you out. And I did talk to a woman who told me that happened to her. But in telling me about this girl and how guilty she felt that she didn't stand up for her, she said about the girl that was kicked out of the group, she said, you know, she was really cute and really good at sports. And I'm thinking, now among boys' groups, a boy who is really physically attractive and good at sports, his status goes up. And everybody wants to be friends with him. And here they are rejecting her. And then she said, and when we got to high school, she was making friends with older girls. And then she said, but she still didn't deserve what we did. And that really struck a chord as well, that she was kind of reaching beyond what they saw. Now, I know you're all here interested in the workplace, and I've written that book, Talking from 9 to 5, about the workplace. And I said that I would draw parallels between the kinds of things that I found among women friends and the kinds of things that happen at work. This is a key to something that is very powerful that happens to women at work. When girls don't like another girl, they will often accuse her of being snobby and stuck up. She thinks she's better than us. She really thinks she's something. In the workplace, often this kind of resentment plays out against women in positions of authority. And this is something I've written about quite a bit. It's in the book, Talking from 9 to 5. I actually started writing op-ed pieces about how this applied to Hillary Clinton in 1992, when she was the wife of a candidate for president. And let me just say quickly what a double bind is and how this plays in. It's different from and worse than a double standard. Double standard means women are held to a different standard. That's not fair, but you can meet that standard. A double bind is a situation where there are two requirements, but anything you do to fulfill one actually violates the other. Women in positions of authority have two requirements they have to fulfill. One is be a good woman, one is be a good leader, be a good person in authority. Anything they do to be a good leader violates expectations for women. Anything that they do to be a good woman violates expectations for a leader. To be a good woman, you have to not talk about what you're good at, be self-effacing, don't put yourself forward. To be a person in authority, you're supposed to talk about what you're good at, put yourself forward. And so women end up in this double bind. So the way that girls' groups turned on girls, I think, was a key to that. Not going to say too much about that because it's so depressing. But it is the flip side of the comfort of sameness that is such a big and comforting part of girls' and women's friendships. You know, when you have a conversation and you tell about a problem and the friend says, yeah, I know, the same thing happened to me, or yeah, I know how you feel, I feel the same way. That's comforting. The woman who told me I find friendships with women difficult terrain to navigate, that's what she gave as an example. She said, you know, women friends really don't let you be different. If you express an opinion that's different or you make a different choice in life, they think you're being judgmental. They think you're putting them down. So it's the flip side of the positive gift, in a way, of sameness. And sometimes the frustration can be so significant that women will actually cut off a friend. And this, too, is something that seems much more common among women friends than men friends. Just a total cutoff. So sometimes it would be clear what the reason is. Often it's not. When women told me they'd cut a friend off, they almost always could tell me why. But very often, when women were cut off, they didn't know why. And I'm curious again, how many of you either have cut somebody off or been cut off? It's common among women friends. I had it happen to me when I was in high school, and I just met someone who went to the same high school. I was a member of a trio, and I have a lot to say in the book about trios because they're very common, friendships among 3 women, and there are certain built-in liabilities there. Anytime you have 3, there's a possibility that 2 will seem to be aligning in a way that the third is left out. So I was a member of this trio, and we did everything together and had lunch together every day. It's very important to have somebody to have lunch with in high school. One day, one of the girls, her name was Susan, stopped talking to me, refused to have anything more to do with me, and never told me why. I also lost the 3rd girl, her name was Marlene, because she was trying to stay friends with both of us, but that meant being friends with Susan, so I couldn't be there. And I still can remember this image of being in the lunchroom and seeing them together and how difficult that was. Now, don't feel sorry for me. I went and I made other friends and had a happy ending. But the experience of being cut off suddenly is such a significant one. And again, a common one, and more common among women's friendships than it does seem to be among men. Okay, another source of hurt, which is also a source of the great gift of friendship, the secrets. And it's such an interesting thing, after You Just Don't Understand was published, I was often quoted as saying, girls are cooperative, boys are competitive. And there's something to that, but it really, I don't think is true. We're all competitive, we're all cooperative, but we do tend to be competitive and cooperative in different ways and about different things. So one of the things that girls can be very competitive about is secrets. Who knows whose secrets? Who knows what? And who knows first? So if you find out that a certain friend knows something about another friend that friend didn't tell you, you could feel kind of bad about that. If you can let her know that you know something about that friend that she didn't know, you might feel kind of good about it. So that's a kind of competition. A woman put something very nicely that she was talking about having the place of these kinds of conversations in friendship. And she said, when I tell somebody something personal about myself, it's like saying, here's a piece of me. This means I like you. And I thought that was such a nice way to put it. But I think it sheds light on the fact that now here somebody has a piece of you. What are they going to do with it? And there's always the risk that they might reveal it to somebody you don't want it revealed to. It could be by mistake, they didn't realize it was a secret. It could be on purpose, just to let people know that they know something about you. I think among women, it's a way that I sometimes put it is, closeness is the pot of gold at the end of the relationship rainbow. And I so often heard people say things like, I wish we were closer, or it's so wonderful we're so close. I never heard anybody say, I wish we weren't so close, or we're too close. Closeness is something that is valued. So knowing secrets is one of the things that is a sign of closeness. We can be competitive about that. Quite a few women have commented to me, not quite a few, several women said they actually prefer men as friends, and one reason they sometimes give is that the men don't repeat their secrets. I don't think it's because men are inherently more trustworthy, it's that they have nothing to gain by repeating your secret, whereas girls have a lot to gain. But it does raise the risk of gossip, and that is something that I heard a lot about. One woman told me that her mother cautioned her, be very careful about revealing anything personal to women who play bridge or get their hair done every week. Because she said, when they run out of things about themselves to talk about, they'll move on to talking about you. Which kind of captures the way that our conversations are so much about personal things and personal topics. I want to move on now to another, the last thing I'm going to talk about that tends to characterize girls' and women's friendships that can be wonderful and also can have some risks involved. And I'm going to illustrate it, and it's also one that has a lot of ramifications at work, which I'll mention after I describe it. And I'm going to illustrate it by reading to you 2 accounts that students of mine wrote for class. I teach a class called Cross-Cultural Communication, and I invite the students to observe their own experiences, write it up, and analyze it in terms of the kinds of things we're discussing in class. I hear a lot about roommates. It's a big source of stress among young women in school roommates. So I'm going to read you an account. A young woman described a problem with roommates and how a young man described solving a similar problem. Here's what she wrote. On a couple of different occasions last week, I heard my roommates mention that they wanted to have a party on Thursday. I didn't think much of it until Thursday afternoon when I realized I would be up all night writing a paper that was due Friday morning. I didn't want to be the annoying roommate who wouldn't allow a party. But at the same time, I didn't want distractions while I was trying to finish a paper under a deadline. So ask yourself how you would handle it if you had this problem. This is what she did. As I was walking back from class with one of my roommates, I asked, "So, what are you guys doing tonight?" As if she had no idea. She said, his roommate responded, "I'm not sure. We're thinking of having a party. What are you up to?" I told her I had a big paper due Friday. She responded, "Oh, in that case, we definitely won't have a party." I told her it would be fine with me. But she restated that they would not have a party, and that time I didn't resist. This is what we would describe as indirectness. She didn't come right out and say, "Don't have a party, I have a paper due." She started out, "What are you thinking of doing today?" And worked her way in and allowed the other person to accommodate her and to not be the annoying roommate. She even said, no, it's fine. But her roommate insisted. Okay. Young man's description of a similar problem. I could not help but overhear a brief exchange between my apartment mates this week. I was doing something or other in my room with the door open. One of my apartment mates was in his room with the door closed, cramming for his organic chemistry test the next day. My other two roommates were in the common room watching the World Series, passionately yelling at every play. This went on for a while until the one studying opened the door and yelled, "Guys, can you keep it down? I'm studying here." The response was, "No." The one studying followed with a quick, "Go to hell." The conversation concluded with a remark from the common room, which I can't read in public, but it was "F you," except he didn't say F, he actually said it. And with that, the problem was solved. They lowered the volume on the television and mellowed out considerably. And no one was mad, just a typical way of problem solving in Henley 6D. Now, if you think for a second, could you imagine a group of girls having that conversation, or imagine a group of guys having the conversation that the girls had? But another thing I think is really interesting, whenever I often read this to my class and I point out, they were indirect. They were just as indirect as the girls were. They said no, but they were going to do it. They said go to hell, but they were going to accommodate. They were acting more belligerent than they really meant, and the girls were acting more accommodating than they really meant. But it's both types of indirectness. I encountered a real-life experience of this kind of indirectness. I was going to be a plenary speaker at a conference, and the woman running the conference was somebody I knew, and another plenary speaker was going to be somebody we both knew. When I arrived, she said, "Judy is not going to be giving her paper today. She's not going to be talking at the conference." She said, "Judy called me this morning, and she said, I feel horrible, I've got a fever, I'm coming down with something, but if you really need me, I'll come and give my talk." And the woman told me, "I told her I really need you to stay home and take care of yourself." And I said, "This is wonderful. Can I use that in my talk?" And she said, "Yes, it was great. It was perfect, direct communication." She thought it was direct because it worked. It was clear. And I think this is so important because people who tend to be direct think indirect people are manipulative. You're trying to get me to do something without asking me to do it. I don't think it's manipulative. This is how language works. If you all agree, this is the ritual by which we make our meaning clear and come to a decision, it's direct. It's experienced as direct. but it doesn't always work. I also was present at a situation where it failed to work, and that just happened to be with a guy, or maybe it didn't just happen to be. I was in the office of an academic colleague, and this was before email, so requests came by telephone. So phone rang, she answered it, and this is what I heard, something like this, her side of the conversation. Oh, gee, I don't see how I could possibly do it. I am so overworked this term. I'm teaching an overload course. I'm on the rank and tenure committee. I knew that was going to be a lot of work, but I had no idea how much it was going to be. I've already accepted several committees. There is absolutely no way I could take on anything else. But if you can't find anybody else, of course, I'll help you out. She hung up the phone and she looked at me with a true look of shock on her face. She said, I told him I couldn't do it, but he put me on the committee anyway. And I said, actually, you didn't tell him you couldn't do it. You told him you couldn't do it in a way that a woman or someone who operates on an indirect system would have understood that, yeah, you've made it clear to say no, and then you make it clear that you're not a bad person. You're letting him let you off the hook so he can feel that he's a good person. And then he would say, oh no, of course I'll find somebody else. But he took it literally. And this is what happens when the conversational styles don't match. If it's not the way you would have said it, you take it literally. You would make a literal interpretation. Use of indirectness is one of the things that plays into a double bind in the workplace. The book Talking from 9 to 5 is based on extensive research that I did. Several corporations went to work every day, observed, interviewed people, peers, subordinates, superiors. And I observed that frequently women were using this kind of indirectness to get subordinates to do things. And men who were observing them would think that they lacked confidence. A woman, I happened to be giving a talk at a university, the president was a woman, and she told me this had happened to her. She was talking to, I guess, her executive assistant in her office and asked her to do something, and she said, could you do me a favor and have this for me by this afternoon? And she happened to be overheard by a member of the Board of Trustees. And he took her aside, and he said, don't forget, you're the president. He thought she wasn't acting with appropriate authority. Asking a subordinate to do her a favor? She told me this anecdote in front of that subordinate who said, of course I knew what she was going to do, and of course I was going to do it. And I appreciate that she tells me to do things in this considerate way. But that is something that did play into the double bind. And fascinating to me, it was so often seen as lacking confidence. And when women were not hired or not promoted, I was often told it was because they lacked confidence. When the women talked to me about it, it was because they were so confident that they didn't have to throw their weight around. All you have to do is let a subordinate know what needs to be done, and of course they're going to do it, because you have so much power. So it's these interpretations, and that is, I think, what is the trickiest thing about conversational style differences. We draw conclusions about the other person's abilities and their intentions based on their way of talking. What else do we have to go by other than ways of talking? And we assume they must mean what we would mean if we talked in that way in that context. But when conversational styles differ, that conclusion may be inaccurate. And I think that's what happens often with this indirectness. And by the way, it can be a problem for women too. A woman told me this again about a social media conversation with a friend. She, I guess, sent an instant message, a Facebook message, asking to change the time that they were going to go running. And the friend responded something like, I guess that's okay. See you then. Well, her danger signals went up. I guess that's okay. She should have said, sure, that's fine, that's great. So she replied, no, we don't have to change it. I can make it at that time. And her friend wrote back, no, it's okay. I can do it at the new time. And she reported to me that they ended up going to the original time. And she was fine with that, but she said, it was like 4 rounds back and forth. She said there really should be an easier way to get there. So reading signals can be a great positive, but it can also be tricky. So to conclude, I've only obviously been able to talk about few of the things that I write about in the book. And I want to make it clear, I've talked a lot about the challenging parts because I guess in a way people want to read books to help the challenging parts and to know that you're not the only one going through it. But I also have lots to say about what's wonderful about women's friendships, and that was really my starting point. I wanted to write about this because friendships among women, for me and for so many other people that I knew, was such a huge part of our lives and so little written about. So I want to make it clear the book includes that as well. And it's because I'm a linguist, my field is studying language, and talk is such a large part of women's friendships, that I was particularly fascinated by the role of talk. How the role of talk in healing, and also the role of talk in sometimes causing hurt. And then proposing, and I think I do propose, ways that words can sometimes heal the hurt that was caused by words. And I want to, and it's reassuring too to know sometimes problems arise in friendships and it isn't anybody's fault. It's external forces. And it turns out that is what happened with my friend Susan in high school. How do I know that? From the moment I decided I was going to write this book, I made up my mind. I am going to find Susan and ask her why she stopped talking to me. Now, I'd been wondering this over the years, and I had made many attempts to find her and ask her. I knew what college she had gone to, and shortly after college, I contacted the alumni situation, no record of her. I started going to our reunions. She never went to a reunion. High school alumni had no record of her. As so often with women, she got married and changed her last name. The internet comes along. I started Googling her. And I Googled her periodically over the years. Nothing. I actually had a draft of the book. I had finished the book, a draft, not, off to the press. I still hadn't found her. I thought, I have to find her. The book will not be complete if I don't solve this mystery. I have a friend who has a real gift for finding people online, relatives. If you want to know what boat your great-grandfather came on when he came to this country, this friend can find him. He's really good with these immigration records. My friend Susan's family was from Iraq. And my recollection was that she was the youngest. She was born in this country, but she had 3 older siblings, two brothers and a sister, who were born in Iraq, and her parents were born in Iraq. I thought maybe he can find her through those immigration records. So I told him the problem on a Friday night. Sunday morning, I got an email. He had found her brother online. How did he do this? He found the immigration record. She was born in Iraq as well. She came at the age of 7. Her name was Suad, changed to Susan. And brothers don't change their names. So one of her brothers was the administrator of a foundation in her parents' name, because he knew the parents' name from the records. And it had an email. And so I immediately emailed her brother, are you the brother of Susan who went to this high school? He immediately answered back, yes, and he CC'd Susan. Different last name. I was shaking. And I started composing an email to Susan. And I felt I had to really pick my words carefully. Maybe she still didn't want to talk to me. I don't know what horrible things she thought I had done. So I'm, working on this letter, and I get the email from her. And an hour later, we're talking on the phone after 54 years, after our last conversation. The first thing she said to me was, it was my brother that made me stop talking to you. Not that brother, a different brother. And what she said was, she and I had got, and the 3 of us, but it was me in particular, that he thought I was a bad influence on her. And I had too much, what he said was too much influence on her. It was a very traditional family. She was supposed to be either at school, the library, or home, no place else. So she was telling her parents she was at the library, and I was taking her to Greenwich Village. You can see I'm still sort of that. And he said that he thought I had too much influence over her, and that if she didn't cut me off, he would tell their parents what she was up to, which of course would be disastrous for her. So she really had no choice. And what she said to me after explaining all this, she said, and he said it was because you had too much influence over me, but I think he was just jealous. And I was so thrilled by that. First of all, I was thrilled that it wasn't anything I did, but also I had already written a paragraph in the book, and I now added this to that paragraph, where I said, where I discussed cutoffs and how hurtful it is when you don't know what you did. And I said there, sometimes it's nothing you did. If a young person is still living at home with parents or guardians, sometimes they will make the kid cut somebody off. And I said, often they have good reason that that friend is a bad influence, and sometimes it may just be that they're jealous, even though they may not realize it. So that's a happy ending to the story, and a happy ending to my talk as well, because I think it's a statement about how powerful and how deep friendships can be. So I'll stop there. And we can take questions, yeah?
We're going to do Q&A, and Tina has a magic microphone that she throws at people. Are we good? Right? Okay.
So you just hold it, tuck it like this, and then toss it.
And then come closer to that.
Another question.
That's great. That's cool. Is that a microphone?
Yeah. Well, I want to know why men don't have these kind of relationships. So why don't men have these great relationships? Why are they so shallow?
Okay, the question is, why don't men have these great relationships? Let me say first, men have great relationships. They don't think all this talk is that much fun. They're wondering, why are we sitting and talking all the time? We could be out playing football. So I think that's part of it. But why? I think Trouble's talk in particular. And you know who explained this to me? When the book You Just Don't Understand was on the bestseller list, which went on for a number of years, Robert Bly had a book called Iron John that was a bestseller at the same time. And we actually did a program together at the reunion in New York. It was the least pleasant experience I ever had. He was really nice, but he was huge. He totally filled up the stage. He spent half the time talking about his book and the other half talking about my book. And I rarely got to talk. And when he talked about my book, he got it wrong, but I'm a nice person, so I didn't want to correct him in front of all these people. Anyway, that's the side thing. But he really helped me understand how men respond. He said, you know, say a guy will go skiing and he breaks his leg and he walks around. And all these women come up to him and say, oh, I'm so sorry, what happened to your leg? That was terrible. He said, that's so demeaning to be told that. He said, you just want to act like there's nothing wrong. And you know, you want to be treated like a person, you want to be treated like an invalid. And he said, it's too much sympathy, it makes you feel worse. Men have helped me understand the end of the conversation at the end of the day. This is one I also wrote about, and You Just Don't Understand, where, you know, how was your day? And we say, I did this, I did that, this is what I thought, this is where I felt, and how was your day? Nothing much. Really nothing? Nah, same old memories. Then you go out with some people, and suddenly he's regaling the whole audience with something funny that happened during the day, and she feels, what am I, chocolate liver? Men have helped me understand that if you come home and you have a problem at work, and you talk about it, it makes you feel bad all over again. You want to leave it at work and feel better. You want home to be a haven where you're not thinking about these terrible things. And I'll give you one last anecdote to help me understand this. My parents no longer lived at that time, had a lot of anecdotes from them. My mother told me that she's really felt bad because my father had been holding his arm in a certain way,
And she had asked him what's wrong with her arm, and he said, well, it's been hurting me. How long has it been hurting you? Well, a few weeks. His arm was hurting for a few weeks and he didn't tell me? She thought terrible. So, research. I asked my father, why didn't you tell her? And he said, you know, I always was raised that you should be protective of women. That made no sense to me. I said, what does it have to do with being protective? He said, well, if I tell her, she'll worry. And maybe it'll go away in a couple weeks, and so she doesn't, won't have worried for nothing. But then he said, and anyway, if I tell her, I'm going to be coming up the elevator, and a woman that I have never seen before in my life is going to say to me, Eli, how's your arm? And he said, that's not the image I want to project to the women in the building where we live. So I think a lot of it is that. I think one for everyone. Why don't you get the question? Over there. Hold it closer.
First, thank you for speaking with us. I have a question. So, if women become more efficient communicators like men,
Speak a little louder.
oh, okay. If women become more efficient communicators like men, and they have less empathy because we're just trying to get things done, why are they seen as a weak?
Okay, first of all, it's a great question to answer, but I don't want to accept that our ways of speaking are not efficient. Because I think that Judy Mueller, her name is Judy Mueller, the conversation, woman who called the woman running the meeting and said, I'm sick, but if you really need me, I'll come. That was a completely efficient way to do it. She obviously was not going to say, I don't care if you're sick, get over here and give your talk. Maybe it was fine, he would have, but it only becomes inefficient in communication with people who don't share the style. So I always think it's the lack of sharedness of style that's a problem, never the individual style that's a problem. But your question is the total double mind. If women stop communicating in the ways that we're used to, which we perceive as empathetic, I don't know, it could just be we're doing it as a ritual way of speaking, then you're seen as a maybe efficient or good example of a authority person, but you're not liked. That word that starts with me that's ready to stick on us. So are you asking me what are we supposed to do about it, or what's the solution?
The reason is I work with a lot of construction people on my own project, and if I'm too efficient or too short with my responses, then they think I'm just
Yeah, that's the double one. An example of that a young woman told me it's all carrying over to social media. So she was telling me there was an intern that she was training, and they got to be pretty friendly, pretty close, and after a few months they had this conversation that one often has with people you have worked with for a while. You know, what did you think of me when you first met me? And he said, I thought you were a bitch. And she said, why? And he said, your emails, it was so direct and to the point. No exclamation points, no smileys. And she told me that she said to him, welcome to the workplace. This was an intern. Welcome to the workplace. We have work to do here. But sadly, I think it's going to be it's the double bind in the workplace. That if she isn't, and those are all ways of being kind of nice on the screen, and that's where we be face to face. So I don't want to leave you all saying there's no solution, because that's too depressing. Many women, and I know there are people here who train people and find ways to do it, that there are things in between you can do. So you may not say, could you do me a favor and take this? And you may not say, how can somebody else take 3? But you might say something like, I need this by the grade, do you think you're going to be able to do that? And be aware of how it might be affecting how you're being judged, and have the conversation with the people who are judging you if you have to point out to them, this is an inaccurate judgment. Another example, years ago, this is before there were so many women in the field of medicine, a woman told me that, I guess she was a resident, and when the evaluations came around, she was ranked at the bottom. So she asked the supervisor why, and he said, well, you don't know as much as the others. She was the only woman at the time. Why do you think that? You asked so many questions. Now, and so much you can say about that. I'm sure, she was sure, it wasn't that she knew less, but if she didn't know, she didn't try to hide her ignorance by not asking. She asked. Now, I've been told, I like to tell the story, and I've been told by some people, I hate people asking questions. I think they should find out on their own. Then there are people who say to me, well, oh God, you better ask, because especially if I'm the patient and you're the doctor and you don't know the right way to treat me, I hope you'll ask. But it is, I think, important to think about how the way you're talking is going to be judged. And either change it or just talk to people about it and point out that the judgment may not be accurate. I'll try to be a little faster in my answers because there's so many questions. How many more here? Closer.
We've got 10 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
I want to thank you for helping part of my marriage. So I'm from New York, Eastern European, overtalk. It's how we share love with each other and work together. My husband is a native San Franciscan from an indigenous community, and he tolerated it, but then he got completely pissed off when he'd start saying something and get on top of him, and he thought I was being disrespectful, and I had to bring her book up and say, no honey, this is something linguistic style. So now when we have Friday night dinners with my friends, we keep like and start, oh, this is really good. This is the way the Jews talk.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, and I say this pretty much in all my books, but New York, California, that was my decision. The most hurtful thing is the sense that, especially someone who close to you, sees you as having bad intentions when you know your intentions were good. That is such a meta message about the relationship that's so disappointing. And so if you can just talk about it in terms of conversational style, rather than you don't respect me, you're not listening to me, then you can find ways to work it out. And maybe not, maybe it will still be frustrating, but you'll know that it's conversational style.
Yeah, thank you so much. Speaking of thank you, I was wondering if you could talk about thank you and I'm sorry and how I feel like I use them a lot and I know a lot of women use them a lot and I feel like I say them more than men.
Thank you for asking that. And I'm sorry to say, I get asked this all the time. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to have an interview with someone from Cosmo magazine because she's going to write an article, and this is the 150th article that I know that I've been interviewed for, saying, women say I'm sorry too much, we smile too much, we say just, this is new one, we say just too much, and this is hurting us and we should cut it out. And I'm going to give her a lecture about the double bind, because it's not that easy. If you simply stop, yeah, maybe you'll be more efficient, you won't be told don't apologize, it's not your fault, but you may be seen in a negative light. And many women that I've talked to, this is for book document 95, told me that they got better responses when they started saying I'm sorry more. And I think it's another important thing about I'm sorry. A lot of women saying I'm sorry is not an apology. It's I'm sorry that happened. And so much of the way people talk, or we all talk, but women are seen as lacking confidence, whatever, because we're seen as revealing something of state. You say, I'm sorry, you lack confidence. Often, ways of speaking that are typical of women are aimed out It's taking into account the effect on the other person. So it's not, I'm sorry, I did something wrong, I'm sorry that happened. It's taking your experience into account. So if somebody says, you say, oh, I'm sorry, don't apologize, it's not your fault. You can point out to them, if they were at a funeral and said to someone, oh, I'm so sorry, are they pleading guilty to a murder charge? They know that there are times you say, I'm sorry, and it means I'm sorry that happened. So you just have to raise awareness. So I don't think it's so simple either way. It's possible that in some jobs you might want to cut back if you think it's having a bad effect. But I don't think it's at all straightforward and simple that we have to stop that. I mean,
Hi. How many next? Because you've had your hand up the whole time.
No, it's fine. I'm enjoying all of the questions, so it's great.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about millennials. I have a 20-ish, mid-20s daughter, and she's in an industry that's still 89% male. So her buddies are guys. And so they're not gay guys and they're not girls, but they're all kind of buddies together. How do you feel that dynamic works with millennials in terms of should she become more like guys? Do you think they will adapt to her? What do you suggest? Is this changing at all millennials than what it was before?
Now, I don't want to pretend to have done a real study of this, as I have said, just about everything I've said so far is based on real research. But my impression is that in many superficial ways, the young men and the young women are adapting to each other in many ways. But in many ways, it's kind of the same old story. The kind of indirectness, being upset that the guy isn't picking up on the indirectness. I think of stories I hear from my students. So many of my students will say based on, you're just in it was published in 1990. Oh, they'll say that's so old. It's all different now. I say, I'd love to see the evidence. Go out, take your conversations, show me. And they go out, they take, and it's exactly the same. So I was just, like the one that I described, how you go about telling your roommates to.
Great, thank you.
Wow, great talk. Hello. And now I feel a lot of pressure because my questions were actually building on other people's questions. I'm a communicator by profession, and one thing that really stuck with me was the discussion around exclamation points and happy talk and making sure that we're coming off as positive at all times. Yet as a communicator, I think an exclamation point is, and as a journalist, it's deemed ridiculous almost, so I try not to use it, but then I find myself being like, oh, am I being positive enough? Am I being happy enough? Am I excited enough about their news? So how, I guess to build on that, how do we break that barrier? Even as someone who, I'm not a linguistic, but someone who really values the connotations of every word and every, point, how do we change that all around? If that's even possible.
Okay, I really do think it's a work in progress because things are changing so fast. It isn't even, well, beyond exclamation points, it's smileys and it's memes and it's emoticons and it's emojis and as soon as one thing gets developed, you know how to use it and they're doing something else. I really think you have to kind of moderate it for the person you're communicating with and try to get a sense of who responds well and who does not respond well to particular uses. But it's never, we're never going to find a style that's going to work for everybody because people have such, I have a chapter on new media and social media in this book and have so many examples of even close friends having different ideas about what's the appropriate way to have conversations on texting. Most young women have really serious conversations with texting. Most young men don't. But these really close friends told me one was really upset with the other because she would tell them about a problem and get such a minimal response. She thought we could have the same kind of conversation by texting that we would have face to face, and her friend didn't. Her friend thought that's not for texting. So so they negotiated, and I think being aware is the first step. And good luck.
It's not up, it's not up.
Hello? Okay, this is a hard question to ask, but some of us do fall under that struggle of like being different. I was an immigrant, I moved here from another country, came to college out here, I'm an engineer, and it's hard to like meet the same requirements because I don't look for a job, and then when I do meet it, then I definitely do the same requirements. So how do women that are different just by virtue of from another country or have a field in which there aren't very many navigate that kind of difference?
Yeah, let me say first, as I said in the beginning, I did not start out as a specialist in gender. It was cross-cultural communication. The first book that I wrote for general audiences was, it's not the book you just don't understand, it was a book called That's Not What I Meant. And that was where I laid out all the parameters, all the ways of speaking that differ from one culture to another. Indirectness being one, use of belligerence, seeming to be angry when you're not, teasing, mock insults. Some cultures use more than others. Interruption as a way of showing enthusiasm versus wait a long time before the other person stops. All these things that can differ by culture. So it's really all the same thing we're talking about. And, it would be great if we all could just talk to everybody who has exactly our conversational style, but we don't have that. I don't know, it wouldn't be so great, but whatever it is, we don't have the option. So I really do think awareness is the key. If you can start being aware of what are the things that are different that are causing issues, talk about them maybe with people that you work with or people you'd like to be friends with. Maybe even try doing things in a different way. And an example in that first book of Chinese student at Georgetown and trying to have a conversation with American students, and he always got interrupted. He could never get the floor because he was waiting for a certain pause that never came. He started pushing himself to just start talking when it seemed so rude, and he was amazed. People would stop and listen to him. So, yeah, I think the combination of just awareness, talking about it, and maybe trying things a little differently. But I have to say, women in engineering is one of the more challenging contexts that I've heard about. So,
I think one thing that's especially challenging is that I have a lot of guy friends. I have a lot of male friends who are American and who were not challenged by the fact that I'm far away, but I actually struggled a lot more with women. And the few women friends that I had in college, if I look back, were actually international students. They were from somewhere else. So that's just, it's weird to me.
in a way it's not. It's a little bit like what I was saying about how women turn on girls. And I don't want to, not general, obviously, I don't know if it is obvious, but I don't want to say generally women do these good things or these bad things. But it's not unusual for women to have a negative reaction to women who are not behaving the way that you expect. So, I don't want to end on that note.
One more. We have time for one more. Okay, so I relate to the triangle thing. So I grew up almost with 2 sisters, 3 girls. My mom also had 2 sisters. Grade school, went to a tiny small town. Guess what? 2 girls in my class. So I have grown. So I have that triangle like fear of being left out. Because it's inevitable, right? Like there's always, I've had patterns of always being left out. So oh, sorry. So how does your group talk about that? And now I have like 2 best friends as well.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I'm the youngest of 3 sisters. I'm way more sensitive to being left out, as I always was. which is maybe how I got into all this and could write about it, so I've made good use of it. But yeah, I have a lot in the book to say about that. And also the Wilbert sisters.
And moms. Well, we could be here all night.
Just want to say real quick, I will be signing books, but if you want to tell me any anecdotes or stories, I'd love to hear them. And I'll be there signing books.
Thank you very much.
I'm Mary Thorsby. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Events for Watermark. And among my many hats is to bring you world-class programming 50 times a year. We do more than 50 events a year at Watermark, and this is our second night with Deborah Tannen. When we had the opportunity to get her, we said, yes, absolutely, and how many times can we get her? So last night she spoke in San Jose. It was just as charming and entertaining, so insightful as you were tonight. Thank you very much. It's such a thrill. As part of my 50 events, in your chair, please have a look. There are a couple that I want to bring your attention to especially that I think you will really enjoy. Our world famous Women Like Us networks. It's strictly networking. It's just come, have a sneaky snack, and a couple glasses of wine, and chit chat. It's girls, it's girlfriends. It's a wonderful event, and we have them throughout the Bay Area. The equivalent to Dr. Tannen in the Wall Street Journal world is Joanne Lublin, and she is set for September 7th to talk about women in the C-suite. She has interviewed the few and far between women that there are, and has told their stories of how they've risen to the top. And as you've read recently, we've lost 3 CEOs, female CEOs, just this summer, so our percentage has dropped dramatically. But she has a very uplifting book and an uplifting message, and we hope you'll join us for that. Maureen Chiquet, a former CEO of Chanel, she's got a great book called Beyond the Label, and we have her on September 18th. And September is also Wealth Month for Watermark. So we have a wonderful panel from BNY Mellon Wealth Management to talk about how investing with a gender lens in companies that do right and are all about women and investing in women through leadership, through their products, investing in gender equality, the math works. So please join us for that down in Palo Alto. And I know all of you are entrepreneurs in spirit, if not in daily practice. So our world-class, sold out, soon to be sold out, so get your tickets. Watermark Entrepreneur Conference is coming up in October 17th. So we hope to see you at that. Come spend a whole weekend with us. This is at 1440 Multiversity. It's in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I spent a weekend there a couple weekends ago. It's beautiful. And we will have one of our most favorite facilitators talk about the conscious leader. So you can come spend a weekend with us, grab some new leadership skills, and meet some wonderful women, and just have a wonderful time. And last but not least, our Make Your Mark Awards. This is our signature event where we honor Bay Area leaders. We are selling tables, bring your girlfriends, and the men in your lives. We also, as Kate has mentioned, we honor a man who gets it with this award, and lots of wonderful women and a company. So we're selling tables, we're selling sponsorships, and individual tickets. And Mayor Libby Schaff of Maricopa will be our keynote speaker. We have a survey, young man, 85. Here. We switched. So I'm going to send you an email tomorrow with a link to the survey. We would really love for you to take that, take some time with it. Your feedback is very, very important to us. Let's see what else. I would like to thank Tina Dow and Fitbit for hosting us. And all of the Fitbit volunteers who did all the running and the staffing, and our own volunteers.